Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Psychology and Spirituality, a Bridge to a Better Life discussion. Our weekly talks are based on the works by Joanna de Angelis, and this is a space, a safe space at that, to confront, to compare, to correlate, and expand spirituality concepts from a psychological lens and bringing insights, actionable tips, real world advice to help all of us have a better life. I am your host today, Marcia Trajano, and here with me are Dr. Anahy Fonseca, Jussara Korngold. Together, we are really representing several countries, right? We are in the US and Brazil today, and we are excited to really come to you with some content about life energies. The Psychology and Spirituality program is brought to you by several organizations, namely AMI Brazil, the United States Spiritist Federation, the TV Mansão do Caminho, and the International Spiritist Council. Make sure you hit subscribe if you haven't already done so. And if you'd like to check out other channels, you can check it out at the site www.spiritist.us. If today's topic is of interest to you, we highly recommend you also read the book Life, Challenges, and Solutions. And just so you know, to acquire any books written by Joanna de Angelis with a collaboration of Divaldo, Pereira, Franco, please go to Leal Publisher, Spiritist Books, and you can access that at www.lealpublisher.com. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I would like to say hello to our good friend, Anahy, and go ahead and take it away, Anahy.
Okay, thank you, Marcia. Hello, everyone. So previously, we talked about Joanna's view of human consciousness, the birth of human consciousness. And today, we will be talking, as Marcia told us, about life energies. So Joanna talks in this beautiful chapter uh, of the book, as Marcia said, Life Challenges and Solutions, about the mental habits. Okay, so what does Joanna say about mental habits? So she says that biological life in itself is the result of automatisms functioning in harmony as long as the organic equipment is in order. So, obeying the heart rate and brain reactions, all phenomena appear repetitive, predictable, within ancestral atavisms. For instance, we have the stages of development of the human embryo that they happen inside the mother's womb automatically. Okay. So Joanna says that subjected to environmental factors, for instance, food nutrients, in the first period of physical existence, it passes without alterations, marching inexorably towards the fatality of its development. So we can't stop the process, okay, of life developing itself. So here she's talking about biological life, okay? And for instance, a child learning how to walk. So the brain is programmed, we could say, to this development, okay? And it happens to all human beings in our evolutionary process. We know that Darwin, as we said in other talks, has already proven, okay, that we come from our ancestors and that life developed here on Earth from different species. Okay, but it started in the same point. So all the process of development of biological life is within the being. So we say that the ontology of the being, the way that we come to this world and develop ourselves, we are still talking about biology, is imprinted in our cells, in our DNA, in our brain, right? And also the development of our species. We repeat this evolutionary process, our phylogeny, okay? Um, so the ontology of the being, the birth of and development of our body, let's say, repeats all of the development of our species. Just take a look at the human embryo, as I was talking to you. In the beginning, we are like, like some frogs, right? The baby frog. And then we go on month by month developing all that we are going to be. Isn't that beautiful later on? So Joanna says that now she turns to mental life. She's
Mhm.
doing like a parallel. And she says that mental life begins with glimpses and perceptions as the spirit takes over the equipment of the brain, which decodes the waves of thought. This is very important and also very beautiful
Yeah.
because here Joanna is saying that in spite of many researchers and people from the medicine and from the health sciences that believe are still materialistic, believe that the brain produces the mind. Joanna is saying that no, the spirit, so the consciousness takes over, okay, the equipment, so the brain of the brain. So the spirit uses the brain to expresses itself here on material life, okay, and decodes. It's a beautiful image. The waves of thought that the spirit is producing all the time. We come from, who knows, well, we should read more Chico Xavier and Divaldo's book to know from where we come, okay? But we are coming with all of our spiritual experiences from different parts. And when we are here, the spirit, as in Joanna's words, takes over the equipment of the brain, which decodes the waves of thought from the initial instinctual impulses. See how beautiful, to cosmic understanding
Mhm.
and a wide experience. It opens the doors of communication to logical reasoning before reaching the superior stage, which is the identification with the divine consciousness. So, in this paragraph, Joanna is from the biological, she's showing that biologically we develop in a way that it's imprinted in our DNA. Okay? But that, uh, and we as human beings, we share all these biological mechanisms when we are here. But
Yeah, go ahead. I'm having
spirit,
so many questions.
yeah, I know I'm going to give to you in a second. But the spirit, when it takes over, okay, our equipment, the brain and our body, right? In a sense that it helps to develop our body. And then I know that Jussara and you have a lot to talk about from spiritist knowledge about that. But she's just making, um, uh, in my point of view, a parallel. to remind us that the spirit is in command. I always think when I read this kind of images that Joanna is telling us, in a robot, for instance, in spite of what people saying, oh, artificial intelligence is being self-aware of this and that, is becoming self-aware, could become self-aware. But what we know, anyhow, is that a robot, for instance, a computer cannot program itself, right? So even that artificial intelligence, it's being developed by man, trying to, to co-create, to learn with himself, with and to co-create, and trying to help nature to happen, in a sense. Consciousness, what is consciousness? I love, as I told you, I love Star Trek, especially Next Generation, and I love Data. It's a character who question all the time. He's an android and he wants to know what's to be a man, a human being means. And remind me, if you can, about that when we talk about emotions. I don't want to give people spoilers, but anyway.
No,
So,
it's interesting
so I
because
just give
I
to
oh,
you.
go ahead. I was while we were talking, I was exactly thinking about an analogy with the computer. Uh, Even thinking about the progression of human beings, because if like you said, we have the hardcore and the software, the hardware,
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 hardware.
the software. So the hardware, even when we started with the computers, they were so primitive, right?
Mhm.
And the software could only reach that much, didn't have, it was adequate for that. And along with the following generations of computers, now we have slim computers, and being capable of having much more power in terms of software. And so I was thinking, it's the same thing. The machine becomes better, develops, but it's still just to accommodate the potential of the software. Like here you said, that there will come a time that us physical body machines and spirit software will even be able to identify ourselves with divine consciousness. So I can't wait to see what kind of physical body, so to say, we will have to accompany this potential of the spirit, right?
I love it. I love it as well. Do you think it's okay for me to just rewind because you were bringing so much, right, Anahy, and what I thought when you were talking earlier in terms of this idea of the biology and life and embryo in developing, and I believe you talked a little bit about the fatality of it all, and I use fatality, but I need to think it's like the destiny, almost. There's no way that you can move from doing that. We are fated to do that, right? Like you said, the example of the child learning to walk. Yet, and I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about it, but yet we in those automatism, we also bring with us those ancestral atavisms, right? We are a result of what we were, uh, and I don't know if you want to maybe talk a little bit about it in this context of the biology, like, and the the mental, right? The physical body in the mental development, as she puts, in all the different components of each.
Okay, so that's exactly, I will
Hmm.
answer you and comment on what you say, Marcia, using Joanna's words, because
Hmm.
it's exactly the next sentence that I chose.
Okay.
Okay, because
Uh-huh.
she's talking exactly about this. She says um, that the human being victorious in the previous stages through which he has passed, that is exactly what you were saying, when reaching the moment of reason, also brings the mental habits ingrained in the reflexes of the fixations of intellectual learning. So she's saying that we go step by step in evolution.
Mm-hmm.
We have instincts, right, in the first moments to help us automatically do things or sense things and learn with this exchange with the world that we are in, until we reach a moment of reason that we can reason about and not do automatically based on instinct only, if we're talking about evolution, right? But in this process of being here and having experiences and exchanges with the environment, we create patterns, okay, that she called mental habits. Okay, I think mental habits are uh, pretty much a very, it's a very nice way that we can all connect, because she's talking about the spirit. When she talks about the spirit, she's talking about our higher self. And she's talking exactly what Marcia, what I understood that you were asking or wondering about all the experiences that we go through uh, in the spiritual life as a whole, but also when we are here in the psyche, when we are here living in this dimension with our bodies, very material dimension, that we are having experiences with our psyche, so with our sensations or our senses, but and instincts, but also in all this process, learning how to reason and even think about our own experiences. So when we do that, as we are doing right now, for instance, so when we are doing that, we are, as Joanna says, we are imprinting, let's say, in our minds fixations of that are results of all this intellectual learning. And she says that they are the ones that start the mental habits directing our conduct, because all existation programming begins in the thought. So first in our evolution, we are not exactly thinking. We are like children, think only like being sensing things, living instincts, but and like the child learning how to walk, doing things automatically, not thinking about the things that we are doing. But little by little, spoiler alert, we develop other life energies as emotions and that are in the beginning, um, and feelings and sensations. Okay, so mental life is very rich in different way, in different life energies that help us as a whole to evolve. And what happens is that we start, as Marcia was saying, we accumulate, if we could say that, different experiences and mental habits and ways of doing things, of thinking about things and doing things. And this we do in this life as the ego develops and the psyche as a whole, but we do also spiritually, stage by stage, reincarnation, different by reincarnation. I don't know if I answered your.
You did. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So should I go ahead, or you and Jussara would like to
I
talk?
just one thing. Of course, I mean, all those concepts are so profound, and you open a Pandora box. I
Mhm.
was just thinking how much we have to pay attention in terms of the education of children, right? Because, like you said, it comes not only from our previous existences, but everything that we are, I mean, how responsible we are in terms of, conducting the conduct, the preconceptions of children. Like so many say, children are not born thinking about hating or hatred one thing or the other. I mean, they will learn those behaviors. So, in one on one side, it's good news, right? Because then you can do something about it. You know that you are responsible. Us as society, not necessarily just the parents, right? Being conscious in how we behave, in what we are advertising, everything. And on the other hand, it has to lead us to really review our values and do the hard work.
I totally agree. I totally agree. And I really get a little sad, sometimes a lot, as a medical person, when I look at some parents with small children, sometimes babies, in restaurants, for instance, or here in Brazil, I don't know in the United States, but here in Brazil it happens a lot. Giving, for instance, some mobiles to small children to pass, like pacifiers, so that the child will keep looking at something and a movement or a small cartoon or whatever, and they can talk or they can have, it's not that this is really awful that the parents are, oh, how, no, it's not that, that they don't love their children, but the problem is that people are not aware of all this importance, Josiah, that you were talking about, of human relationship. There are studies in neurology and psychiatry that to develop, for instance, empathy, high moral and spiritual values. Children learn, they don't learn this in the TV, in the mobiles, or whatever. They learn in human contact, eye to eye, as we are trying to do here, because we are looking to each other. It doesn't matter if it's virtually, but we are exchanging energy because we are with all that are viewing this program also. Even if we cannot see them, but we can feel the energy and people can connect to this because we are exchanging ideas and we are learning the expression. For instance, if Marcia asks me something with with a face, anxious face, then she didn't I understand. Maybe I have to pay attention what I'm talking about because this is automatic. Or if you guys are smiling, oh, then I'm okay. Now we are communicating. This is human stuff. We learn with the face has the highest amount of circulatory small vases and also the small nerves, okay, because we have a lot of muscles in the face. I'm reminding my anatomy classes in many decades ago. It's a lot of small muscles and a lot of irrigation and of the the blood and the nerves. Why all of that? Because we do a lot of expressions, different expressions. So the child needs to learn uh, in human contact with teachers, with other children, neighbors, parents, family members. And also the reading, for instance. There are lots of research that say when we see it, especially the parents, but somebody, that are emotionally connected to the children, to the child, sits with the child to read, and read, and then the character said this and that and all this stuff. So the child learns also. It's a beautiful way and very quick way to learn human relations, because learns how to have empathy, and reading books, not so much as watching movies. I'm sorry about, but I love movies, but not for small children. For small children, the main way to learn values like empathy, for instance, compassion, all this kind of feelings and higher values are with the parents, with people that love the children, and they are related to the child's life, and reading and communicating as we are. So we have to know, Jussara, it's very good that you talk about that, because there are all these automatisms. But I think that what Joanna also, when she talks about mental habits and this life energies, she wants to wake us up, in a sense, to the importance of what she said, the spirit taking over, using the body, all this potential that is given to us by the higher power, by God, or whoever people want to call this higher in loving consciousness, to have this beautiful life, that it's such a beautiful way of developing our consciousness, of expanding our consciousness. So I think we should be aware of all this responsibility of this, and be very grateful for this opportunity, and help our children, our youngsters, to connect to this, to this beautiful opportunity. And we cannot do that giving the the education to others, to that are not emotionally connected to the child.
And it's important for us to pause here, because this is not a topic about how to discipline your child, how to take care of
Oh,
your children. But we know, right, that in our ancestral brain, our animal instinctive side, we are immediately connected with rapid movement. This is how I go back to the savannah, how the antelope would be safer from the lioness that will be hunting them. If there is a small movement, you immediately are taken into that. That is not the case for a child at this level of evolution in humanity, right? It's the small movement, like you said, beautifully said, by the way, in your face, your facial expression. How do you understand and connect with each other? And it is a pity that we are so busy, right, Anahy? We're so busy that it's just easier to just give that mobile device to a young child, because it will, no matter what, the rapid movement, the colors, etc., will take precedence into the more subtle expressions. But I think this is important for all of us to know. We can all do better, right? And I remember Jussara, Anahy, and it goes into my generation, in the upbringing of my own children, where there's this burst of let's do everything for the brain, right? So let's put this baby into every single child. Remember the Mozart, and you want to understand music and languages, and there's this overly burdening of a child development years. And now we know that emotional intelligence, right, that we're talking here, the social awareness, social development, the how a child learns from playing with other children is so much more important at that stage that we don't have to worry. We just need to be loving and we need to be present in the child's life.
Exactly. And you see, Joanna is taking us step by step
Hmm.
because the next sentence, look. Can I go to the next
Yes,
sentence?
of course.
Okay. So see if she's holding our hands and taking us step by step. In the thoughts are the orders of what should be done and how to carry them out in the spirit thoughts and in the psyche when we are here. As a result of previous experiences here in our past, even in the psyche, but also in our spiritual past, as Marcia was talking about. So, as a result of previous experiences, thoughts of pain, anguish, pessimism were more deeply marked due to their unbalancing force. So, like our trauma, right? When we have bad experiences, the traumatic thoughts and that give us pain, anguish, pessimism, they are deeply marked, she's telling us. It is these unconscious evocations that first attack the mental home of the individual in his daily life. So, linked to the repetitive mechanisms of suffering behaviors, the person maintains tendencies towards masochism, cultivating without realizing it the mental habits that generate conflict and suffering. So, in
I'd
this
love
sense,
to talk a little bit more because I think it's so important in today's life, don't you think, Jussara? This whole idea of uh, uh, all the past experience containing pain, containing that negativity, containing a moment of anguish, leading to that I want to feel pain because that's all I know. I don't know if you want to maybe go deeper into that, Anahy, because I think it's such an important topic for us to understand how the evolution of our biology from embryo to here really start to link up and make sense.
so I would like, because I put here
Sure.
to remind me to talk to you about for instance, the medias.
Mm,
Okay. And I remember once I was for instance, two example.
mm-hmm,
Once I was in here in my city, Porto Alegre, in the very south of Brazil, and I went to see a journalist talking. It's many years previous to the COVID stuff and the pandemic and all this stuff. So he was a very open-minded person. I don't remember, I think he was talking about spirituality. He's a very well-known journalist. And then he opened two questions, and I asked him, "Oh, I would like to know." I said I was studying this topic for
yeah.
many decades, years, and that I would like to know how they choose in the media. For instance, if they know that a news is going to cause a lot of suffering to people, and how they choose the way they are going to talk about that, the amount, of this was previous to, it was like around 10 years ago. And if they thought about that, the way to give the news and the amount of times that it would go, and the guy got mad at me. He felt like I was criticizing. I was wondering because it's not my profession. And what I've seen, for instance, in the late years of the pandemic, I thought the media I'm sorry, I don't want to, bring a lot of debate, of criticism, but just as a psychiatrist that studies this kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
and talking about that we are talking about today, the mental habits and that are ingrained, And also the Marcia was talking about the reptile brain, as we say, the base
Mhm.
of the brain that have all this inheritance of previous, the past of previous
Mhm.
experiences, even talking about biologically, imagine spiritually, that it's what Joanna always, she always opens to the spiritual life. And the guy got mad, okay, and didn't answer. And what I've seen in late years, for instance, I used to see a program that has here in Brazil has some Brazilian journalists living in New York, and there's a kind of young journalist. I like him very much. He talks about many things. And then in the first week, I think, when the COVID stuff was in the air, and they said the guy simply he had a breakdown in the air, and because I understood that he had two children, and he was crying because New York was deserted and all this stuff, and he was really scared. They never talked about that things so deep as we are talking now, even if, as I told you before, the researches in the area of neurology, psychiatrists in the medical field have already proven that a person that is more spiritual, she gets sick, or he gets sick less than the average person, and is more mature and have ways of coping with crises and different illnesses. They have higher scores in coping. They have different ways of and creative ways of coping with crisis. So
Mhm.
they are healthy, generally speaking. They are healthier than the average person, and especially healthier than a person that doesn't have any religion or any spiritual search. So what I think is that Joanna is trying to remind us of all this, and that together with what Jussara told us, we have to be responsible also about the other generations that don't have the amount of experiences or even reading and studying as an older person has. So the way that we talk about these things, the way that we think together with the young people, with children, is very, very important, so that we don't, um, like feel imprisoned by these mental habits, by these ancient ancestral patterns of dealing with crisis or with fears, like Joanna said, pessimism and suffering. And we have to be very responsible. People from the media, for instance, I don't know United States, but here in Brazil, it was awful. It was part of making people less capable of coping with all the crises. The amount of, the times, of course, people have, they have to be informed of what's going on in the best way possible, but with responsibility, and not only about the biological, our body, but also the psychological, and if possible, when possible, the spiritual aspect, in a broader sense, about what's different faiths, asking people, religious leaders from different religions, to help to talk about things, our sufferings, our fears. This is very healthy for the human being, and I haven't seen this happening in Brazil. We saw a lot of other
Mhm.
different uh, parts of society discussing things, but that were not helping people to cope with all the stress. So I don't know if you want to comment, but I think this is very important that
It
Joanna,
is.
this is a previous book from This I can't remember but I think it's 1 decade old, the book. So
Hmm.
she's talking, you see, without it's out of space and time. She's talking
Yes.
to all
Yeah.
of us
Yeah.
different.
Yeah. Now, the only thing that came to mind, and I really appreciate you bringing how the media outlets did not have a concerted effort to understand it. Do we sensationalize this human crisis, right, a pandemic, or do we understand the needs of a population? And of course, we now know there is no effort, no orchestration. But as you were talking here, I just know somebody who's very dear to me, very close to me, who lost not one, not two, not three, but 18 relatives and close friends due to COVID. On the 19th, which was somebody that passed not due to COVID, but a disease, he flipped. He could not cope anymore. He had reached the maximum that he had, and a crisis ensued as a result. And I think it's important for all of us, right? Maybe what is the responsibility that you, Anahy, you, Jussara, all of us here have in dealing, in helping, in bringing the knowledge that we can to help that other person that may not have access to that spiritual knowledge, the psychological knowledge, right? To understand and put a different lens to whatever crisis it may be. So thank you. Thank you for reminding us that of that.
Welcome. I don't know if Jussara wants to comment.
You're
No,
on mute. Yeah, go
no,
ahead.
let's go ahead.
Yeah, I'm now interested on the idea, the linkage of the repetitive and self-punishment. Okay.
Uh,
Because you mentioned before, and that triggered, let's go ahead and maybe talk about it as it's something that and I'm seeing everywhere, right? This, and it's unconscious, as you mentioned, unknowingly, how we have those mental habits that lead us into a pessimism or negativity or even self-punishment. And I think this is such an amazing topic, right, Josada, that we're going to spend more time with it as we can see that it hits us all.
yeah, so let's go back to Joanna. Then I think
Mhm.
she's going to lead us
Mhm.
and answer
Sure.
all these reflections that we are doing, because she says allowing oneself to be led by primitive habitual manifestations, the labors that keep the being in the stage in which it finds itself, are repeated without positive results, without the moral value to reach new levels of the process of evolution.
Mhm.
And I put a comment of my, I was, I have kids that have grown up playing video games. Of course, I always chose the ones that would help them to think,
Mhm.
especially the Japanese, Nintendo, and things like. I don't want to make sorry any. You can touch that, but anyway, especially the ones that have stories that help the kids to reflect about, for instance, the eternal fight that we know that it's within us of good and evil, for instance, things like that. So I thought that what Joanna is saying, that it's like to get stuck in a certain level of a video game,
Ah.
always repeating the same moves without being able to go to the next level. And here, to use Joanna's reflections, that she says the abilities here would be the moral achievements learned in the phase or level that you are in. Okay, that's a reflection that I made when I read this sentence. a
Hmm.
Joanna sentence, because in a certain way, okay, when you play a video game, I'm not an expert. I just looked, I couldn't even manage the thing, but I knew you had to have some achieve some objectives, have some powers or whatever. So to make an analogy, John is saying that here in this big like Matrix, the movie, that it's beautiful.
Hmm.
So very symbolic. So to go to the next stage, to expand our consciousness, we have to struggle to decide when we are able to go to the next phase and see, or in expand our consciousness and see better thing and understand better what's happening to us. For instance, okay, if we are we're going through a crisis, and this time, as Marcia was talking, it was a world crisis, which has taught a lot to all of us, that we are really brothers and sisters. Doesn't matter the country, doesn't matter any characteristic of the person, gender, color of the skin, and level of education. Doesn't matter all of this. We all work together, experiencing everything together. So I think a lot of people suffered. We all suffered, of course. A lot of people, as Marcia was talking, suffered. Uh, had a lot of losses. But to go to the next level, we have to think what all this suffering has taught me, and my inner strength. Recognize my inner strength, and they are related not with something that I have different from other people. That's the most important. As Jesus told us, it's all within us. The kingdom is within us. So to relate to this, we have really to find this strength in ourselves, and it's there for us. It's there for us to go to the next level, so we don't keep repeating
I
the
love
same
it.
habit.
So this is great. We actually come to an end of our time together, and let's reflect upon all this amazing knowledge that Joanna de Angelis brings to us. And this is just a sub-chapter, right? A sub-chapter of a chapter of a book that is part of an entire series of books. Oh my goodness. So with that, we have some really nuggets of knowledge. And I would say for me, it's about being the present and understanding that it's all connected, but we are given what we need, right? The resilience to move on to the next level. So with that, I want to say we'll see you next week, and I appreciate all of you being here with us to get today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marcia. Thank you, Jussara, and see you in the next program.